as I mentioned, inshallah, if there's any sisters who would like to come downstairs, they're welcome to come down and get situated behind the glass doors. You're also welcome to open those doors if you like, inshallah. It's up to you. You can keep them open or keep them closed. They might be locked from above the door, so if you want to open them, you'll have to unlock them from above. And there will be a microphone that will be provided for the sisters for the Q&A, inshallah. We will have some Q&A at the end as well, inshallah ta'ala. Inshallah, we'll get started. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to this very special program with our dear and beloved Shaykh Mikaeel, who is no stranger to our community. But as alhamdulillah, Dallas-Fort Worth is a rapidly growing community, including the Plano community, there are always people that are relatively new to the community. And therefore, I would like to just introduce Shaykh Mikaeel to everybody by mentioning a few things about him, and then we'll hear a lot more from him, inshallah ta'ala. So, and Shaykh can correct me if there's anything that needs to be corrected. But Shaykh Mikaeel Smith is a faculty member at the Qalam Seminary, which is not too far from here. He teaches tafsir, seerah, aqidah, and hadith at Qalam. He also gives lectures and conducts various classes for the community. He has also served previously as a resident scholar at the Islamic Society of Annapolis as well as the Islamic Society of Baltimore. He grew up in a Christian home in Buffalo, New York, and he embraced Islam at the age of 18, mashallah, after reading the Quran and reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. After that, he completed the memorization of Quran, and that should really cause us some pause, subhanallah. Yani, mashallah, mashallah, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. So he completed his memorization of the Quran, and then he continued his studies in my alma mater, Jamia Abu Nur. We're going to talk about that, inshallah. In Jamia Abu Nur in Damascus, Syria. And then in 2012, he earned his bachelor's degree in Islamic studies at the Darul Uloom Canada in is it Chatham? Chatham, Ontario. Chatham, Ontario. Okay. Now he's the author of With the Heart in Mind, which is a book that explores the moral and emotional intelligence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But more recently, he came out with his newest book, which is called When Hearing Becomes Listening, and that's the one that we're going to be talking about today. He currently resides in Dallas, Texas, with his wife and 3 children, mashallah. Are they 4 now, or still 3?
No, 3.
3, okay, inshallah. Just checking.
I can't read books if I keep that.
So, Shaykh, if we can start out by just asking, I think a question that a lot of people would like to know is, if you can tell us briefly about your transition into Islam.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Allahumma inna nas'aluka hubbak wa hubba man yuhibbuk wa hubba amalan yuqarribuna ila hubbik ya arhamar rahimin. I was 18 years old. And I was always like I grew up kind of a spiritual, minded kid. But Christianity, as I got into high school, didn't make sense. There were certain aspects of it that just didn't add up. And one of the things that really tugged at my heart for a long time was, I remember asking my mother, quite frankly, who do I pray to, Jesus or God? Right? Jesus, or who do I pray to? And I remember I was probably 9 years old when I asked this question, and never got an answer. And I think for us Muslim parents, it's a lesson for us to also not brush off the questions that our children have. Islam is a rational deen. We have reasons why we believe what we believe, right? And if we don't know the answer to a question, and you live in Dallas, and you live in Plano in Dallas, I mean, you live in Darul Hijrah of America, then you should be asking the questions. You should be getting the answers, because the scholars are there to get those answers from. So when I went to high school and kind of, not openly, but just in a'mal or behavior, kind of left Christianity because of the inconsistencies. And it wasn't until completing high school that...
so you became atheist for some time?
No, it's more of just kind of not practicing, like the majority of people. You still do all the rasham and all the rusum, but you don't really believe deep inside. And that's where, I think we have a responsibility of passing on this religion. There are so many people anxious. But anyways, so I was 18 years old, and...
Did you have any Muslims in your high school? Did you know any Muslims?
Yeah, there was one Muslim. We were the only two minorities in the school. So we were best friends. And he never gave me dawah. But his akhlaq was amazing. And it wasn't until later that I became Muslim. And he found out, and he was just mind blown that I had become Muslim. So I was 18, I became Muslim, and I read the autobiography of Malcolm X because the person who had introduced Islam to me was actually from like the Nation of Islam, right? And it's the whole another religion, pretty much, So I read that because he had went through those similar things. And so after that, I, converted. Within 6 months, I went to Dar Ulum Buffalo, and that's where I did tahfidh al-Quran.
Okay.
Yes.
So you did your tahfidh in Buffalo.
In Buffalo. And then I visited Jamia Abu Nur.
So what took you to Syria then?
Because I was thinking of, I'd finished hifd and I was doing ulum, sharia in Dar Ulum, and you had to learn Urdu, right? So I was thinking maybe I could take a shortcut and not learn Urdu. For those who don't know, like the Dar Ulum Dars al-Nidami, and many of them, their Urdu is part of the curriculum. So long story short, I came back and learned Urdu. Still learning it. Right?
So you went to Syria, you spent about 6 months in Syria? Or
4 months.
4 months, learning Arabic?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you decided to come back and pursue
and
Dars al-Nidami?
continue, because I'd already started in Dar Ulum. Yeah.
Okay.
You're getting a thorough biography, mashallah.
Mashallah, mashallah. So for those who don't know, I learned my Arabic language initially at Jamia Darul Uloom, Jamia Abu Nur.
Come on over.
At Jamia Abu Nur in Damascus, the same institute that he spent 4 months at.
Yeah.
I was there for a year.
Allahu Akbar.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So we have that connection, subhanAllah.
We spent time with Shaykh Rajab Deeb while we were there. A lot of
MashaAllah,
time. Yeah,
mashallah.
went to his mazra'ah.
Subhanallah, subhanallah. Well, so coming to the book, Shaykh, this book called When Hearing Becomes Listening, prophetic listening and how it can transform the world within us and around us. Now, I'm going to ask a few questions about the book, but just to let the audience know a little bit, if you haven't seen the book, I'm going to read to you the table of contents. So it starts with an introduction, When Hearing Becomes Listening, and then there are 3 parts of the book and 6 chapters in the book. So the first part is called Why is Listening Important? And then the second part is called What Prevents Us from Listening? And the third part is called The Reward of Listening. And then the first part has 2 chapters. Chapter 1 is the importance of listening in the Quran and Sunnah. Number 2, reclaiming deep listening today. And then the third chapter is understanding communication. 4th chapter is the noise detox process. Chapter 5 is an Islamic framework of listening, Ibn al-Qayyim's levels of listening. And chapter 6 is what do we gain from deep listening? And then the conclusion is called moving forward to becoming better listeners. So Shaykh, my first question for you is, what motivated you to write this book?
Okay, quite a few things. Bismillah. So as you highlighted, I'm more of a traditionally trained scholar. I felt that there wasn't a lot of literature that really talked about the relationships that the Prophet ﷺ had on a deeper level. So the first book that I wrote was explaining what emotional intelligence is. And for really briefly, for those who don't know, a simple way would be hikmah. We would say hikmah, right? Udu'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah, right? Wal mau'izatil hasana. Call to the way of God with hikmah. But emotional intelligence is deeper than that. Emotional intelligence is, understanding a person, connecting with them, reading their body language, understanding what they're saying. And in the first book, I explained that when we look at the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what we can see in him is someone that truly connected and understood the people that he was interacting with. And this is the key. The way he was able to pass on the message was through that deep understanding he had with them. Now, why is that so critical? It's because in our own families, we're not even connected. But the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a deep connection with people. And so I wanted Muslims to rethink what it meant to, hold your son's hand, or tell your son, I love you, or, tell your wife, I love you, or just the emotional connection was something so critical in his life. And so I wanted to show from the tradition, hadith and Quran, all about how he connected. And so I begin with one hadith that almost everyone knows. And the hadith basically says that Abdullah bin Amr bin As, he says, the Prophet sent me for a mission. And when I came back, he was sitting in the masjid by himself. And, I did the mission for him and I was about to leave. But then I asked him the question, who do you love the most? And he thought it was him, right? And the Prophet listed a group of people. And he said, I wish I never asked because I found out my real position. But the point is, anyone who interacted with him felt loved. And so we talk about all these other sunnahs, which are important sunnahs. We don't belittle any sunnah. But one of the most critical sunnahs is, do the people around you feel loved? Do the people around you feel a connection? And so that's why I wrote the first book. I wanted people to see that sunnah of emotional intelligence. And a big part of emotional intelligence is understanding your own self. If I'm angry, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us not to go to prayer when you're hungry or have to use the bathroom, because it gets in the way of communication. So if you don't understand yourself, then you really won't even be able to understand other people. So the whole science of tasawwuf, which is a very important science, is about understanding the self. And that is emotional intelligence, because if I don't understand me, how am I going to ever understand you? And if I can't understand you, how can I connect to you? And so the idea of the first book was the greatest sunnah of the Rasul, I feel, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they are all amazing. But I think the one that has the most potential is his ability to connect to the people around him. To connect to Hassan and Hussein, and connect to Fatima, and connect to Aisha. And it's amazing. And I often begin by saying, many in this room haven't even hugged their sons in years. And revelation began with a hug. Revelation began with a hug. Many of us don't go to our own wives when we have problems. But the moment he had an issue he couldn't handle, he ran down the mountain to who? He ran in the house. Did he say, I can handle this, I'll figure it out? He said, I'm scared, I'm worried. Hold me, please. So I wanted people to see that again. To see that again. And so that was the objective of the first book, is to learn a new sunnah. The new sunnah of connecting to people deeply. And so that was the first book. The second book was because a lot of people asked me, well, how do I become more emotional intelligent? Like, how do I become? And so one of the quintessential qualities of the Prophet was his ability to listen to people. And it was that ability to listen to people that caused such a deep connection. Right now, me and you are talking. You're looking at me, I'm looking at you, you're taking in what I'm saying, and that's how our relationship is growing. And so this book is all about how, listening was a part of the Prophet ﷺ's life, and how it's mentioned throughout the Quran to become good listeners. قالوا سمعنا وهم لا يسمعون لا تكونوا كالذين قالوا سمعنا وهم لا يسمعون. Right? إن شر الدواب. So many verses about people who have the faculty of hearing, but they don't listen very deeply to people. And so that's kind of just the premise of it. I wanted people to become, and most of it's in this room. If we asked ourselves, we would say, I'm not a good listener. Majority of us. And if you tell me a lie, I'll ask your wife. I'll ask your daughter or your son. Is he a good listener? Does he realize when you have pain? Does he realize, does your father, and I don't mean to harp on the brothers all the time. It could be anyone in the household that doesn't have the aptitude. And so I felt that if we learn that it's sunnah, then maybe we'll walk into the house with the intention of a sunnah. I'm going to walk in this home and I'm going to get to work. I'm going to connect to the people in my house.
So Shaykh, Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, we'll take questions at the end. But like you said, your background as a student of a traditional seminary, well known in America, in the world, they don't really talk about emotional intelligence in the madrasas, in the Islamic universities. When we learn seerah, even when we teach seerah, we don't traditionally teach it or learn it from this perspective. What sparked your interest in emotional intelligence and to, look at the seerah with this lens? Was it something personal in your life? Was it a teacher that sparked your interest? Was it something that you felt was a need in the community, a bunch of these things together? What caused you to take that step in a direction that's not really traditionally done?
I came across the term. So in the late 90s and early 2000s, emotional intelligence was the biggest buzzword in corporate America. Till today, it's still pretty big. I had come across the concepts in an undergraduate program, psychology, emotional intelligence. And as I started to parse through it, I realized that all of this is in the Sunnah. And one of the, a lot of us, we go to bookstores, okay? We go to Barnes & Noble, we go to, if you're smart, you go to half-price books, way better, by the way. You go to half-price books, and we read these books on different topics, but then we have to Islamify it. We have to make it Muslim, right? Because the author is not Muslim. And so I wanted to write an emotional intelligence book, a listening book, where the person picking it up, a Muslim, knew that at least a person of some knowledge wrote this book, and I could just read it. And I don't have to worry. And I can see this as my knowledge. See, one of the things that really bothered me was this is the prophetic knowledge, but other people are stealing it and using it.
So did you feel like when you were reading those books in half-price books, you're like, wait a minute, this is exactly our prophetic teaching. Why is this guy writing about it?
Exactly. And why aren't our khutbahs about this? Why aren't we talking about this? Why are our families so detached when he was so connected? What happened? Right? And then what bothers me is we'll see it written somewhere else, our youngsters, we'll see it and we'll be like, wow, they got it all figured out. And the imam or the scholar or whoever is like, no, that's our deen too. But they're like, Kahai, where is it? Where can we find it written? Where is this? And so I wanted to claim back the understanding of connecting as a sunnah. And I understood this too. If I walked into this masjid and mentioned study after study about the importance of connection, you'd walk out and it wouldn't affect you at all. But the moment you realize it's sunnah, now you give it ahmiyat. Now you realize, ye mera deen hai, this is part of my religion, I gotta do this. So that was my objective. I wanted people to see this is sunnah, this is the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I was talking about listening, Shaykh, and listening is hard. And the reason it's hard is because whatever the person is saying, you embody that too. If I come up to you and you're like, Shaykh, how are you doing? And I say, well, my mother is going through this, and my sister. Now, right when I start to give you all this, it gets heavy. And if you truly love me, then you'll sit there and allow me to speak, because it helps me. It helps me. A lot of us, when we walk into our home, it's aram time. It's rahat. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he entered the home, kana fi mihnati bayti. He went to work. And why do I say that? It changes your mentality. When I get off a long day at work and I walk into the house, there are 3 little children that it doesn't matter what was happening at work, they need my emotional presence. They don't care about bills being paid. They care about a present father. And that is what will help guide them. You know, Shaykh, subhanAllah, Joseph, alayhi salatu wassalam, we all know that he went through a very big fitna with Zulaykha. The Quran says he saw a burhana Rabbi. He saw a sign of God that was stopping him. A sign of God. What was a sign of God? A lightning bolt flashed in the window. An angel behind her like, don't do it. That was a joke. It was okay. Come on, man. You got to crack more jokes with these guys, man.
That's what you're here for.
Okay, all right. Man, ooh, tough crowd. Okay. It was a sign of God. The Quran calls it a sign of God, Shaykh. What is a sign of God? Ibn Abbas says he saw his father. And his father was saying, son, we don't do that. But what was their relationship like? Did Joseph know, alayhi salam, that Yaqub, alayhi salam, loved him? Come on, we all know that. Were they tight? Oh, come on. The point I'm trying to show you is that a prophet in the time of fitna needed his dad to help him out. The Prophet ﷺ coming down from the mountain doesn't know what to do. Where does he run? He runs to his wife's arm. Hold me, I don't know what to do. And what does he say? لَقَدْ خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي. I'm scared. Some of us would never walk in the house and say, I'm scared. We have to be strong. I'm the man, I can't show any emotion. Your Rasul showed emotion. So I wanted people to reclaim this emotional connection that our Prophet had. Everyone, when I give this talk, they go, Umar, what about Umar, Shaykh Umar? Umar ibn Khattab. Do you know what Umar ibn Khattab says about his father? He says he was the most abusive man I ever met. He was the most abusive man, we hated him. He was the most abusive man we ever met. Oh, okay. Now we understand his akhlaq a bit. Now we understand what time with the Prophet changed him. Now we understand who he became later. You're using Umar ibn Khattab in the early days as an example. He says, I had trauma from my dad who was an abuser. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. So I wanted to reclaim this sunnah, especially now, when all the young men are trying to imitate, whoever they can for masculinity. Our Rasul had the best example of masculinity. Let's learn from him. So those are just some of the concepts.
Jazakallah khairan. So when hearing becomes listening, was not inspired by your students who are not listening to you in class?
Yeah, well, a bit. Or when my wife wasn't listening to me. No. It was me. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary.
Just making
sure. You don't write a book. There was one alim, he said, I give a bayan on a topic I'm struggling with, so it helps me. So I write a book on an issue I'm struggling with, because that became the therapy. That became the method of becoming better. And I recommend, this is where we are in Islam in America. It is so important. In this room are people that are extremely educated. Collectively, we probably have 300 degrees and however many postgraduate degrees in this room. But where's our literature being written? Where's the Barnes & Noble books from a molecular scientist or a pediatrician or someone or something that I can pick up? So it's time for us. I heard one person say, if you can't find the book you're looking for, it's because you have to write it. It's because you have to write it.
Mm-hmm. So, Shaykh, who needs to read this book?
Oh, who needs to read this book? It's a very good book for families. I think it's a read together between any two people in a relationship. I gave this whole workshop. Normally, Shaykh, I teach this class in like 4 hours. So I was in Santa Clara 3 weeks ago, and I was talking about the Rasul. He said, if you love someone, tell them you love them. Tell them you love them. And I spoke about how there are so many fathers and sons in this room that have never said, I love you. So one uncle in the back, he stood up and he said, in a certain accent, I won't give the accent away, but he said, we don't do that. My culture, we don't do that. He wasn't being rude, but he was just saying. I said, is your son here? His son was right in the front. I asked his son, do you want to hear your dad say, I love you? His eyes started to fill. He said, yeah. I said, can you walk into the back and go hug him?
How old was his son?
16. He got up and he walked and he hugged his father. They didn't let go of each other for 4 minutes. They just held each other. That was the first hug in I don't know how long. The Rasul ﷺ taught us connection, 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 connection. What happened? How are we so distant? Okay, the earlier generation had to focus on Kamana, Pesa, this, that. Not this one. What are we doing? Why aren't we connecting? What's the problem? And so, who needs to read this book? I think, families need to read this. I think families truly need this. Because sometimes one person is trying to grow closer, and the other person is not there, not ready to grow closer. I think it's a beautiful book for friends too. So I want to share one hadith, if I may. And I want people to understand the power of listening. There was a man, you guys know the hadith as I started. There was a young man who came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining that his father wanted to take his money away. So the Rasul ﷺ, he's also like a judge. He has to adjudicate, he has to solve cases. So he says to him, okay, go get your father and bring him. While they're gone, the angel Gabriel comes down. And he says, when the man shows up, ask him to recite the poetry that he was thinking about in his head as he was coming. Gabriel leaves. They arrive. The young man begins to present his case, and the Prophet says, quiet. Sir, can you please share the lines of poetry that you were reciting in your head while you were walking? He's shocked. He goes, you never let us down, and you always prove to us that you're a prophet. How did you hear what my own ears haven't heard yet? My own ears haven't heard yet. Now, you know why this is profound? I have a friend, Shaykh, who I call, and sometimes when I'm talking to him, just me saying it, I figure out the issue. Have you ever been talking to someone, your wife, whoever, and just talking about it, you figure it out? He says, my own ears haven't heard me. Do you know what the Rasul ﷺ says? قُلْ وَأَنَا أَسْمَعُ. Speak, I'll listen to you. Speak and I'll listen. Some of us in this room have never had someone close to us say, speak and I'll listen. There's no one to talk to. So we go on Twitter, we make anonymous accounts, we post whatever we can there. We have to get it out somehow. There's no one to listen. I just want us to learn to say to someone, قُلْ وَأَنَا أَسْمَعُ. Speak, I'll listen to you. The man began to recite the most beautiful poetry. The last lines of which he says, it was my hope that if you didn't treat me like a father, you would at least treat me like a neighbor. When he was done, the Prophet was weeping. And the Prophet ﷺ, he then said to the man, stand up and leave. Anta wa maluka li abika. You and your wealth belong to your father. Now there's no fiqh here. There's no fiqh. This is the Prophet solving a family issue by forcing them to listen to the hearts of each other. Do you see? And so I just wanted people to see the beauty of the prophetic words, speak, I'll listen to you. It forced the young man to actually hear what's inside the heart of his elderly father. There's two people in our families that listen to each other really good. The littlest children and the grandparents. Everyone else in between is too busy to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why they're good listeners is because all they want is each other's company. That's it. Your child doesn't care about nothing. They just want to spend time with you. Sometimes I'm leaving the house to go run to Home Depot, and my son Qasim, he goes, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to Home Depot. I'll be right back." He goes, "Can I come?" Before I was there, like, "No, just stay." I say, "No, come on." It's the joy of his day. We went to Home Depot together. Me and Dad went to Home Depot.
Mm-hmm.
Did nothing. Presents, that's all they want. And of course, our elderly parents. But here's the problem. If you weren't listened to, it becomes hard to become a good listener. Do you understand what I'm saying, Shaykh?
Mm-hmm.
So they say the inability to listen and connect is transgenerational, meaning it goes through our nasal. It goes through our nasal, our lineage.
So I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, please.
So I don't want you to jump ahead of me here.
Please.
I think that a lot of people have told me that they have noticed how some people are just naturally good listeners.
Okay.
Whereas others are not.
Okay.
They're not good listeners.
Yes.
I know that, going through this book, you have, mashallah, a lot of references that you've cited. You've cited Islamic references as well as Western academic references here, and we'll talk about some of them as well, inshallah ta'ala. But why is that in your readings, in your research? First of all, is that true? And if that is true, then why is that?
Yeah. The question is, some of us, I'm not a good listener naturally. Yes, this is true. We all have a different mizaj. We all have a different mizaj. You're the most soft-spoken imam ever. I could be heard from the parking lot. Okay? He's calming me down. His presence is like soothing me, yo. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. You guys wouldn't be able to put up with me. You're like, he's yelling too. Why is he yelling so much? Yo, chill out. Anyways.
We love you, Shaykh.
I love you too, man. So his mizaj is that. This is my mizaj. We all have different mizaj. Some of us get quick to anger. Remember the hadith where the Prophet said there's 4 people when it's in relation to anger? Let's go over it real quick. Quickly angry and quickly calms down. Quickly angry, I'm not doing the right order, but quickly angry stays a long time. Slow to anger goes away fast. Slow to anger stays a long time. The Prophet said these are 4 different temperaments. Mm. It doesn't matter what temperament you have, you still are taught by our deen, la taghdab, control your anger. So here's what I'm going to say about listening. I cannot come on the day of judgment and say, "Oh Allah, I could not listen to my wife and children because I'm not a good listener." If farz hai yaar, you have to. Who else is going to listen to them? So we all have to work on certain things, and some of us it comes more naturally. For example, you're soft-spoken, I'm not. But we both have the obligation of control what you say. Mm-hmm. So on the day of judgment, you're chilling a little bit more than me. On this issue, maybe there's other issues, I got you in. Now, do you understand?
Right.
So this whole concept of I'm not a good this, I'm not a good that, it's a cop-out. There are certain areas that you have to strive to become better in.
So does your book give any practical tips on how to become a good listener?
Yeah. So
can you share with us maybe a couple?
Okay, a couple. We're getting straight into
Not all of them, because we want them to read the book.
Yeah, we want you to still buy the book, inshallah. Okay, so when we talk about becoming a better listener, one of the key concepts is to not focus on words, but meanings. Mm. Words, not meanings. Okay? So here's a tamreen. Here's mashq. You ready? I walk in the house, and my wife says to me, "You're never home." And I pull out a calendar, and I show that the majority of the days I've been home. Beokufe.
العبرة بالمعاني.
This is silly. You're arguing the words, not the meanings. Can someone tell us what the meaning is? I miss you. Spend some time together. But you focus on the words. Child comes home from school, says something. You focus on the words, not the meaning behind. So one of the advice that I can give is that whenever, and we don't do this with everyone. You're not doing this with Becky from HR at your corporation, okay? You're doing this with the people close to you because they deserve this from you. You're listening to the meanings of the heart, not the words that are said. Focus on that. That's one thing. Here's another thing. I spend a lot of the book talking about 3 levels of listening. Listening to self, listening to others, and listening to Allah. This is the main premise of the book. And the reason is this. Before revelation began, the Prophet ﷺ was made to love solitude and silence. Because a lot of our own noise, trauma, issues, is what disturbs our ability to listen to someone else. Do you understand what I mean by that, Shaykh? So until you come to peace with yourself, then you won't be able to hear what someone else is saying because you think they're attacking you. You think they're making fun of you. I say to my wife, the food is great today. She goes, oh, so yesterday it wasn't? I say, you have some insecurity issues that you need to deal with. I would never say that to her. And she would never say that to me. This is a make-believe situation. So if any of the sisters know my wife, you better not be texting her. Okay? So do you get the point there? I said the food is great today, but what did she hear? She heard because of insecurity. So this is where tasawwuf comes in. And alhamdulillah, I can say the word tasawwuf in this masjid because you're here, alhamdulillah. If I wasn't in Plano, IACC, I wouldn't use the word, but I can.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. The tasawwuf is about coming to peace with yourself. Understanding yourself deeper. That way, when you hear, there's a verse, يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ عَنْ مَوَاضِعِ يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ عَنْ مَوَاضِعِ. And the verse goes on to talk about marad fi qulubihim. يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ. Let me translate. They change the meaning of the words. Now, it's talking about Yahud, it's talking about Mushrikeen, it's talking about, but there's a sifa there, there's a quality there of not hearing what's said and making it sound like what you want it to say. So, one way to become a better listener, the first step, is you need to connect to yourself deeper. You need to spend time in muraqabah, you need to journal, you need to write about what you feel, okay? Another reason why we're bad listeners, and so that's one, remove the noise. We need quiet. Another thing, the listening takes time. It takes emotional investment. That means I can't do it with everyone. So one of the sections in the book I talk about, just focus. What did Rasulullah say? Someone said to him, who do I give sadaqah to? He said, yourself. And they said, then who? ثُمَّ مَنْ تَعُولُ. Then the people right around you. I'm not telling you to listen to every person deeply. I'm telling you, your core close people, ma, bab, brother, sister, wife, child, the ones who you're mas'ul anhum, you'll be questioned about connection with them. Those are the ones that you give your whole heart to and you listen to them. And so those are a few things. Focus closer. Get off WhatsApp. Okay? That's for the uncles.
You can't listen on WhatsApp?
No,
like,
man.
Through chat?
You can't listen on WhatsApp. No, you can't. No. And the people that need you are not on WhatsApp. They're right there with you in the house. I use WhatsApp because for some reason, the uncles can spend hours on WhatsApp. The shabab are on like TikTok and Instagram. The uncles are on WhatsApp, sending everyone else weird messages. About Allah and the tawaf, mutaf thing written in the people or something. I'm just joking.
Shaykh, one of the things that you talk about in your book is the research of Robin Dunbar. And you talk about social layering.
Yes.
I thought that was really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so I know it's late, but bear with me. So there's this thing called social brain theory that was written or It was, pioneered by Robin Dunbar, okay? And the idea of social brain theory is, bear with me because it's actually pretty interesting for our Islamic context. The idea is that humans and primates evolved. I know we were created, I know, I'm a believer, alhamdulillah. But we evolved larger brains because of the complexity of our social relationships. What that basically means is a reptile doesn't care about its grandmother. We do. A reptile doesn't care about its in-laws. We do. So our ability to handle complex relationships was a reason why, according to Robin Dunbar and others, that we evolved larger brains. For a Muslim, what that means is the thing that was the sharaf of Bani Adam was our usra, our family relationships that we could maintain. I walk into my house and my mother is there, I'm a son. And I walk into another room and I'm a husband. And I walk into another room and I'm a father. All in one home. That takes a lot of cognitive load. And so one of the things that he wrote about is social layering, which is everyone in the world doesn't have the same relationship with you. And if we can, really quickly.
Close friends. Close friends, best friends.
Well, the terms are irrelevant. It's just more close to who you put there. So real quickly, I'll just show you. I know everyone's very far away, but basically, you have these layers of people around you, right? And the idea is that a lot of people try to spend time on the furthest people away from them, when the people closest to them are the ones that truly need them.
Let me read it for them. So these are concentric circles here. And the smallest circle says self. And then you have close friends and best friends.
And I would even say close family members. How about that?
Close family members, best friends, good friends, friends. And then you have acquaintances. And then you have known names.
So let me explain the practicality of this. Some of us are spending hours or a considerable amount of time communicating with people who are on the furthest circles out. And the people closest, we say, time nahi hai. I don't have time. What do you mean you don't have time? You were just out there on tweeting and commenting on YouTube videos and this and that, but you don't have time? You were emotionally investing in those people. When the people that truly need you, and that's the key. The key is that it's a haqq of another person. That's what I wanted people to realize. When one of the Sahabi visited the other Sahabi, Salman Farsi, and another, Inna li jasadika alayka haqqan wa li aynika wa li zawjika alayka haqqa. Rasul said, he taught a very important message, which is these people have a haqq on us. And so when the Rasul is rolling around in the masjid with Hassan and Hussein, he's fulfilling their haqq of closeness and bond. He's not just doing it, he's fulfilling their haqq, so that they grow up to be confident young men who know that, my grandfather loved me. My dad loved me. So I just wanted people to see that part of spending more of your time in the middle, and that alone will make us better listeners.
Just a couple more questions, Shaykh, and then we can open it up for people's questions. You also mentioned towards the end of the book that you found in the works of Ibn al-Qayyim, perhaps the most detailed classical breakdown of the levels of listening based in the Quran and Sunnah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So what I wanted people to realize is that I wasn't going to take this concept of better listening only from Western academics. I wanted to show that our traditional scholars have written on this as well. So a very well-known scholar is Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, wrote hundreds of books he's written, and he says that there are 3 levels of listening. He says the lowest, most shallow level is listening with hearing sounds. And he says there's nothing special. Animals hear sounds. There's nothing special. You talk to your cat, right? All of us, if you have a cat, you talk to your cat, but the cat doesn't truly understand, in the sense if you read Iqbal to it, it doesn't understand, right? But then the second level, he says, is listening for understanding. So now I'm listening to truly understand what you're saying to me. And this is where relationships are grown and built and things. The third level, he says, is called listening to respond. Now, this takes a little time to explain. Because right now, Shaykh Arsalan is listening to me. He's not just waiting for his turn to speak. Once I quiet, he says something. No, that's not good listening. You're not truly there.
Which a lot of people make the mistake of doing, isn't it?
Exactly.
I'm just waiting for you to stop. I'm formulating a response already for you're going to say.
Yes.
And I'm not really listening to you, but formulating a response, yes.
Exactly. And so that's what I don't want people to think. What he meant was, when you listen, now I'm not going to tell on myself here. I think there's a lot of people may have the same thing. That someone in your family saying something to you, and they say, did you hear what I said? He smiles. That was a good smile, too. That means you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you go, yeah. And they go, well, why didn't you say something? And we're having a whole dialogue in our damag. Yeah. We're like, oh, I responded. He goes, no. True communication is not just listening, but responding back. And this is where something really beautiful comes up. I talk about this when we listen to Allah and when we read Quran. So a lot of us read Quran, but we never respond to the Quran. Can I explain this?
Sure, please.
So at the end of Surah Bani Israel, I was in Philly, and we were reading this verse. And ironically, the kid they asked to read, he read the last verse of Bani Israel. And the last verse of Surah Isra, it says, وَكَبِّرْهُ تَكْبِيرًا. Now let's translate that for everyone. What does that mean?
Magnify your Lord.
And magnify your Lord. And then he said, Sadaqallahu al-Azim. I picked up the mic and I said, how come no one responded to God? And everyone's saying, what do you mean? I said, what did he just say to you? God said, and I translated it. Maybe you didn't know because of language. I said, God said, say takbir. So now I asked him to read it again. Read it again. وَقُلِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي وَلَمْ يَتَّخِذْ وَكَبِّرْهُ تَكْبِيرًا. And the whole masjid goes, Allahu Akbar. I say, When the Rasul ﷺ read Quran, whenever he read about Jannah, he would stop and he would go, Ya Allah, please give me that. He would get to another verse about Jahannam, he would stop and say, Oh Allah, protect me. Respond. Here's another one. أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. Yes. أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدَهُ. Yes. Responding. And some of us go, okay, Shaykh, great. I don't understand Arabic. What language do you understand? And when's the last time you read the Quran in your mother tongue? There are so many people in this room who do khatam after khatam, but won't read the Quran in the language of their own faham. How are you ever going to respond?
Oh, you're listening.
You're not listening for understanding. Because you think it's just to recite. It's a conversation. It changes how you think. What's the verse? Do you think that he created all of this in vain? That's a question. Respond. Say something. No way. Okay. So the point is that when we listen to respond, responding is part of the transactional communication. Right now, you just nodded at me. And that told me, he understood, let me keep going. And I said more. And he goes, yeah, that was a response. And it facilitated a deeper conversation. So I want us to understand, when we make dua even, that's a whole other conversation. But when we read the Quran, why aren't we responding to it? There's a sajda verse. When you read it, what do? You literally put it down and you respond. Right? And so throughout the Quran, I had one of the students at Qalam gather over 60 or 70 questions that Allah asked in the Quran. And it's interesting because cognitive behavioral therapy is based on asking questions too. And responding to that. So if you listen to the Quran and respond, it has a way of shaping how you think. But we're not listening to respond.
MashaAllah.
So these are just some basic concepts.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khairan, Shaykh. I'm going to stop here, inshallah ta'ala, allow the audience to ask some questions as well. So do the sisters have a microphone?
Yeah, there's one there.
Okay, good. So we're going to let the sisters go first, inshallah ta'ala. Do any of the sisters have a question? You can turn on the mic and
Okay,
ask.
let me preemptively say this. The question I get every time I do this workshop is, how can I make someone else a better listener? Nope. You're here, the knowledge will make you a better listener. That person has to be willing to engage in the conversation of becoming a better listener. So this isn't knowledge to make someone else a better listener. I understand we all want to be heard, and we deserve to be heard. Do you know one of the greatest punishments you read in the Quran for people of Jahannam is Allah says, don't talk to me anymore. No one's listening to you. That's one of the greatest punishments in the Quran. Don't talk to me anymore, no one's listening to you. And that's why one of the greatest forms of abuse almost could be, I'm not listening to you. It's worse than a smack in the face many times. Because it's the complete severance of a connection. So the most I could say is, not a shameless plug, but introduce the person in your family to this concept. And say, hey, I need you. I need someone to talk to. And then put it in the Rasul. The Prophet side, this is beautiful to me. And I'm going to end, we'll have questions. Revelation began in the arms of Khadija and it ended in the arms of Aisha. Our Rasul was connected to people. He was held by them. He didn't say, let me die by myself. I'm a wali Allah. Don't touch me. I'm a friend of God. Don't touch me. He literally died on her chest, being held. And what did he run when the revelation first came? Come hold me. So at least we can bring this sunnah back, this perspective of who he was and how he connected. Bismillah.
I don't think there's any questions right now.
Okay, we'll come to the brothers. We'll come back to the sisters, inshallah. Yes, brothers.
Jazakallah khair for Shaykh Aslan for bringing him, and also Shaykh for coming here.
Of course.
I think, may Allah reward you for writing the two most important topics our Muslim community and scholars have ignored. Emotional intelligence and the activism, which is a fundamental building block of that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm suffering, I can admit you openly, I have no hesitation to say that.
Yeah,
right?
same here.
Part of it is, I'm not lecturing just one, part of it is our own educational system, at least in the Eastern education, is completely ignored. The Western system at least incorporate to some extent the emotional intelligence. And this is something we should probably think about incorporating. But my question is, it's all good on writing, but how do we translate that into our internal trigger points? Meaning, how do I take this knowledge and internalize through some immersive, long-term workshop? It's not going to fix in 4-hour lecture workshop. So I want you to talk about how can we take knowledge from the book. I'll buy the book immediately.
Just give him that one. I'll give you another one. Give him that.
My question is, how do we take this and make it part of us? Do you have any plan to offer a long-term workshop kind of thing? Not 4 hours workshop.
Oh.
Take maybe months long.
Oh, that's called counseling, Habibi. That's called counseling. And I'm sure in this community there are a number of licensed therapists or counselors that we can talk to who get paid to listen. And we need them sometimes. So if you want long-term someone to help you listen to yourself and others, and let me say something before everyone jumps on me.
My question.
Yes, please.
My question is, how do I take this knowledge from the book and the paper? Many books are there. How do I make it part of me that I can be a better listener?
You act upon it.
But reading the book doesn't help me. It's only cognitive process.
Okay, that's a great point. So what I recommend is, as you read through the book and there are points of action, implement them. Implement them. One of the things that I recommend is journaling, for example. Even voice note journaling, where you talk about your day, what you're feeling, what's going on. Starting to do that. That's one thing there. Talking to your loved one or close people. I'll give you let's do this. Are you ready? We're going to do this. I normally do this in the long workshop. We didn't talk about breath, depth, frequency. There's so much to talk about.
I had that as a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the problems we have is communicating our love and affection for people that we truly love. Is your wife here right now?
No.
Okay, do you love her deeply?
Yeah.
Okay, pick up your phone. Open your messenger. Come on, quickly. You got it open?
Yeah, 1 second.
No, hurry, quick, come on. It takes that long, Habib?
Okay.
Okay, I want you to say, honey, do you say honey sometimes to her? Honey, I'm just thinking about you. I love you so much. Be home soon.
Yeah.
Done?
Yeah.
Send it. You sent it?
Yeah.
You're going to do that for the next 5 days straight. 5 days straight. On the 6th day, she's going to message, where's my message? She's going to expect that closeness. But now I want you to do it after with your son, your daughter, and a few other close people to you. Do you understand? And slowly build that. I write about this in there a bit.
But that's emotional intelligence part, listening. I'm talking about the deep listening.
Yeah, the deep listening. My recommendation is that you select very close people to you, and when they are talking to you, you get everything away, and you spend your time focused on what they are saying. Short moments of depth of connection are what we're looking for. Not long 30-minute conversations, just short moments of depth and communication. But maybe some of the stuff written will be able to be action items for you, inshallah.
Yeah, if I may say something. You know, we're very blessed, alhamdulillah, that Shaykh Mikaeel is a local of DFW. And what I would recommend to everybody is get the book, read it, and write your notes on the margins, and then set up a time with Shaykh Mikaeel and ask some questions, some practical questions based off of what you read. Because I think some of these questions will be answered when you read the book, but there will naturally be more questions, and you can always talk to him, inshallah.
And we have a workshop coming up soon, a more in-depth workshop. I'll be posting it on my socials soon. A long course with modules to it that we're going to be launching soon, inshallah.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Who's next? Brothers
This
on
brother,
this side?
right? No.
Bismillah.
Yes, I just got one question. So, listening is one thing, right? I mean, but we also see, especially in our culture, like men, they don't talk, they don't express their emotions.
Yeah.
So maybe that's your next book, how to talk. But that's a classic problem where people don't express their emotions, and sometimes I try to decode my own dad, when he was alive, and never understand what he's thinking.
Yes.
He's probably absorbing everything.
Yes. Oh.
So maybe they don't want to talk, but how do you?
Okay, this is beautiful the way you phrased it. And you have children, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't want to pass that on.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to just start forcing. That message he sent, that's the kind of moment you're going to have every night. Kids, I love you guys. How are you? You have to start. It's awkward at first, but you got to push through it. You got to start expressing. One thing I recommend is journaling, because at least you're getting it out. You're practicing saying.
So it's not a problem for me. It's like problem for like my elders, or like I want to talk to my mom. Or my dad.
Oh yeah, I told you it's hard to get other people.
How can you get them to talk?
Okay, one way is open-ended questions. So I did this. I was on a flight like 3 months ago, right when I was writing the book, and I wanted to, practice it. Okay, so the person sitting next to me, normally I just open my computer, I start working, but this guy sitting next to me, I said, okay, let's try this. Hi, how are you? How are you doing? Where are you going? I asked open-ended questions. How did that make you feel? How did you feel about that? What did you think about that? The man talked for the next 3 hours. And at the end of the 3-hour flight, he goes, that was the most therapeutic flight I've ever been on. And all I did was keep asking questions that I truly worked, and this is the key, I truly did care in that moment. It wasn't just the farce. I truly cared and wanted to know. And he opened up. And so sometimes it's very hard later in life to start learning how to open up. But sometimes asking questions, which is a key part of the book, asking questions. How are you feeling? Blah, blah, blah. Instead of the yes, no. Are you okay? But don't ask yes, no answer questions. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Yes. How are you feeling? How was today?
One word answers you.
Yeah.
How do you get them to expand?
Yeah, well, it's
So
tough.
we can understand their emotions so we can react.
Yeah. Wallahu alam. I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah. This brother's been waiting for a minute, yeah.
Number one, I just wanted to say there was like a lot of revelatory things that you said during the lecture. But one thing that I thought was really like kind of profound was when you said like with the Quran, like I mean, it's Allah talking to us, but it always feels like it's a book,
Yep,
the way
yep.
you talk about it. But like the way you said, like Allah is asking us to like respond and kind of
Amazing.
in a conversation.
Amazing.
I thought that was really relevant.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, no, I feel you, Habibi. I feel you.
But my question to you was, like we talk a lot about like back home culture and stuff like that, and how that influences communication. But I was wondering, you're an American, you're from here in the West, right? And particularly in America, there's kind of like the spirit of rugged individuals, and like kind of like the individuals standing on their own and stuff like that. Do you think that maybe because we're all from very diverse backgrounds?
100%. There was one of the reasons I worked on this book is there was a young man from a certain demographic that I think you would connect with. And he said that my grandmother passed away, and when she passed away, it hurt me a lot. And we were at the funeral, and my father nudged me when I was crying, and he said, "Stop, hold it, what are you doing? Keep that inside." When literally the Prophet taught the opposite. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Innal ayna tadma wal qalbi yahsan wa la naqulu illa ma yadda rabbana. So yes, culture plays a big role, but we follow sunnah. Sunnah has to overcome even that rugged individualism, man. There's an African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And we want to go far. We need community. We need to move forward together. So we need each other. Human beings comes from the word insan anisa. And anisa means to be with others. That's human. That's human. Adam right away needed Hawa. It's human, Habibi. One more, please, because of the time.
Any question from the sisters?
What time's prayer?
This is your last chance.
Okay.
10:15. No questions from the sisters. So we'll take one more from the brothers. Shaykh, you choose.
Two.
Two, okay, two.
I got you. Yep.
Why? I'll make it quick. I have a curious question, actually. Wondering when you did the research for your book. So if you're a news junkie like myself, if you turn CNN or any channel here in the West, there is a talk show. Everybody will listen, wait for the chance for the next one. You turn the channel in the Middle East, for example, or in Africa, everybody will interrupt each other, right? So I think people in the West, we agree that they're better listeners. Maybe if I can generalize kind of the Muslim countries, which is the opposite. But at the same time, relationships on the West tend to be weaker than in the Muslim countries. Is it the unexpressed feelings among the Muslim culture, like what is being said, that is stronger than actually the active listening in the West? I'm just kind of curious.
Allahu alam. Profound insights. I think, just off the top, I haven't studied this. I know nothing more. These are just thoughts. Wallahu alam. I think there's a decorum or adab that is shown externally. You meet people around here, Texans, could be the most hillbilly person. They smile. How you doing? Nice to meet you, sir. He hates your guts. Oh, bless your heart. That's a dua against you. It's just decorum. It's just outward. Whereas those brothers arguing, yeah, they all love each other deep down. Wallahu alam. Allah knows best. Let's stop there. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for taking the question.
No problem.
So, do you think there's a difference between the spiritual insights that a Rabbi or Shaykh has, and you can tell like what your nafs needs or what you're going through, versus emotional intelligence that everyday people can have?
No, I think a murabbi or a counselor that you have a relationship with. At the end of the day, a murabbi is a counselor, yo. It's a therapist. That's all. Just got like ijaza from shuyukh. That's what I feel like. But it's for a good reason. It's not bad. I'm just saying. They help you with anger, help with desires. Like, that's literally a therapist. They just are so close to you that they can help give you advice that's good for your soul, or good for your aql and your ruh. So what was the question? Like, how is it?
So what's the difference between spiritual insight or spiritual intelligence and emotional intelligence?
They're very similar, because a lot of the things that a murabbi is going to help you with, anger, jealousy, all that, are the same things you could go to a therapist and say, I'm struggling with jealousy.
So non-Muslims would give you the same like tarbiyah?
But they won't have the the prophetic aspect to it. For example, you go to some therapist and you're homosexual, they may just be like, oh, it's okay, go ahead, be yourself. When the Islamic counselor or murabbi is like, okay, you're struggling with something, let me help you overcome so you can become your best self. Because your self isn't the ultimate objective, pleasing God is. Whereas in the Western paradigm, the self is the ultimate objective.
There's a deeper
Do you understand?
question I sense from his question, if I may.
If I answered it, is that?
Alhamdulillah, was good.
Okay, if you need more, then we can talk more.
So it's 10 o'clock, Iqama is at 10:15. We're going to stop here, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to have somebody call Adhan. And then, if you guys want to talk to Shaykh Mikaeel, but after Isha, I think he has to run, right?
Yes, yes.
We can buy the
But there's no books. Online. Oh, online. Oh, sorry, I didn't plug the book. Qalam Institute. On Qalam Institute, you can purchase the books there, inshallah ta'ala. I'll make a promo code IACC for no shame for you guys.
So,
Don't share it, please.
So for those who didn't hear, Shaykh said that you can purchase the book on the Qalam website. Once again, the book is called When Hearing Becomes Listening by Shaykh Mikaeel Smith. Shaykh, Jazakallah khairan for blessing us with your presence. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you and make this a sadaqah jariyah for you. Ameen ya Rabbil
I
Alameen.
made a promo code for everyone in the gathering.
There's a promo
Not your
code
cousin somewhere else.
only for those who are in this gathering.
IACC is the promo code for no shipping cost.
IACC.
Yeah, IACC. This is supposed to
This will get you free shipping,
be.
inshallah
Because
ta'ala.
we could have brought the books for you, but.
جزاك الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله